Hello and welcome to the weekly wrap up video. We are wrapping up week 8 and beginning week 9 here in Writing 303. And so there are some just kind of housekeeping issues I want to talk with you about. The first thing that I want to discuss with you is essay number 2 and revisions to essay number 2. Um, this week, essay number 2 was returned to you at various points during the week. Everybody should have which you can access through the gradebook. You should have both a copy of your essay with my comments on it, as well as in the feedback window, you should have uh, a rubric pasted in there that highlights the point distribution. And I encourage you to look at both of those things. The comments generally address what has been done well in your paper, as well as things that you want to focus on for revision. The rubric doesn't have a lot of information specific to your paper on it, but it is really important that you pay attention to where you're losing points. There are some people, for example, who are losing about a grade or more on papers because they're doing things like not putting the paper in APA document style, and that's a really easy fix. So look at the rubric and see where you're losing points. In many cases, that'll be a very good indication of what additionally you need to do to revise your paper for a higher grade. Again, essay number 1 and essay number 2 can be revised for higher grades. Those are the only two assignments where this is possible. You have an opportunity to revise the research paper as well, but that opportunity for revision comes before the research paper has been graded. So the revisions for essay number 1 and essay number 2 are due on the last day of class, which is for us May 16th. They can only be revised once for a higher grade. So once you submit it for regrading, the grade that you get on the revision is indeed the grade that you are going to get for the assignment, unless, of course, it's lower than the original grade. Then I wouldn't reduce your grade. I would just simply leave your grade as is. In terms of feedback on revised essays, I know that if you're in the process of revision, you may want feedback on whether the changes you're making are making the paper better, and that's certainly reasonable. However, it is not possible for me to take multiple drafts of a paper and review them. I have this semester I have just at York. I teach at a couple of places. I have just at York in 303 44 students. So you can imagine that if I was spending an hour every week revising or looking at revisions on people's drafts, that would just be an impossible amount of papers to get through. So what I do instead is, if you are going to work on a revision and you would like feedback on the revision in process, you need to come in for office hours or schedule an online office hour with me, so that we can talk about your draft in progress. And I'm happy to do that. So, but that is how I'll handle it, as opposed to taking the papers and doing commenting on the drafts via email. All right. The next item, proposals. This week you submitted proposals, and the proposals that were submitted all have feedback on them. And as you know, if you submitted a proposal, even if I made suggestions for changing the proposal or changing the scope of the project, you receive full credit for doing the proposal. At this point, not everybody has submitted a proposal, which is disappointing. But if you are in that small group that has not yet submitted a proposal, it is too late to do so for credit at this point. The assignment is a 0, but you should submit one for feedback as soon as possible, because the proposal is not just an assignment that is graded. It is an opportunity to talk about the direction of your research. So if you haven't submitted a proposal, if you don't have a topic that we have talked about, then I am concerned about your ability to complete the final assignment. And I like to give people advice about their proposals, to suggest to them whether or not the direction that they're taking is ultimately going to result in a paper that I feel will be successful in the course. To that end, those of you who have received feedback already, please heed the advice to shape your topic focus. I'm not telling you to change your topic to be mean. And in no case did I tell somebody to change their topic altogether. I've simply suggested ways that topics could be refined or rethought. Um, but I've been teaching writing for a long time, and so I have sort of a crystal ball, if you will, when it comes to research papers. I I can look at a proposal at this stage and I can tell you um, not necessarily every proposal that will result in a successful paper, but I can tell you proposals that aren't likely to result in a successful paper. So when I've asked you to focus your topic more fully, or when I've asked you to maybe think about just changing the focus a little bit of your topic, I'm doing that because I want you to have a successful paper, and because I don't think that the direction you're taking is ultimately going to yield a product that will exemplify what it needs to be a successful research paper. So please heed the advice to shape your topic focus. If you have questions about that advice, obviously, please ask them sooner as opposed to later, and over email is probably the best way to have that conversation, or, of course, during office hours. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about with you are annotated bibliographies. The annotated bibliography assignment is due for grading at the end of this week. And one resource that you probably will find helpful is a sample annotated bibliography. It exists as a file in this week's module folder. Um, but here are some bullet points, if you will, about the annotated bibliography assignment as it appears on the research paper project assignment sheet that we looked at a few weeks ago. The first of which is for your annotated bibliography, you need to have 5 sources. That assignment is graded based on 5 sources, and these cannot include course readings because, of course, the annotated bibliography is supposed to show evidence of research in progress. So, annotating course readings um, it doesn't demonstrate that at all. The other thing that I should tell you here is please don't include more than 5 sources in the annotated bibliography. While your research paper has to have more than 5 sources, it has to have a minimum of 8 as per the department's guidelines. Um, the it's not worth your time to annotate all of those sources, right? Annotation um, is a specific goal for this assignment, but it's not something that is useful to do for every source that you will be including in your paper. So please don't include lots and lots of sources on the annotated bibliography. You only get credit for doing 5 of them. Um, you should include a few things in the annotated bibliography. In addition to the 5 sources, the grading is based on one, having the complete citation information formatted in APA style as it would appear on a references page. So this past week, the discussion board was used for sharing citations, and that was for the purpose of giving people a chance to troubleshoot problematic citations. You did a really great job as a class in putting those citations up there and responding to your peers with suggestions for changes or additional resources for appropriately citing the sources. So that was very, very good. In addition to the appropriate citation information in APA style, you should include a summary of the relevant source content. In other words, if you have a book length source, you're not probably using the whole book in your paper, so I don't need a summary of the book, but I want a summary of the part of the book that you're planning to use in the paper. And the same thing would be true of a long research article. You're not using probably the whole thing in your paper, but you're going to use some of it. So there should be a summary of the relevant source content. Do not paste from the abstract. I once had a librarian who was doing a research orientation and told the students they could just do that. You may not do that for the research papers or for the annotated bibliography assignment. Anytime you're pasting somebody else's words, that is, of course, plagiarism. It also doesn't demonstrate that you yourself have read and understood what the material is about. So the summary needs to be something you have written on your own. Um, you also need to include an explanation of how the source will be used in your paper, and that's very important. That is part of the grading. So the annotated bibliography assignment is typically one that students do well on. Most of the time, students score in the 90s on the annotated bibliography. When students do not score in the 90s on the annotated bibliography, this is what has gone wrong. Either they have not included all 5 sources, and each source in total is worth 20 points. So if you only have 4 already, you're at an 80, for example. Um, or they do not have the citation information in APA style. Either they have not formatted it at all or they've put it in MLA format. So that's another way that students don't do well on the assignment. Or they have not annotated the source, so they haven't included a summary for the source, or they have not explained how the source will be used in the paper. So as long as you have all of the components and have done them well, you should expect to score well on the assignment. It's a different kind of assignment than an essay, so it tends to be easier points to get as long as you do all of those things. Um, the last thing that I just want to emphasize to you is if you take a look at the sample annotated bibliography file, you're going to see that for the summary of the source and the explanation of how the source will be used in the paper, that those are pretty brief things. They're really just a couple of short paragraphs. So please don't feel like you need to write a page or 2 pages on every source that you're using in the annotated bibliography. That's not the intention of the assignment at all. This should not be a lengthy, writing intensive assignment. Actually, the bulk of the grade is really based on the work you have to do in order to prepare the annotated bibliography, that is, locating the sources and doing the research. It's not so much based on the amount of writing that has to appear on the page. So when you look at the sample annotated bibliography, you're going to see that the entries are fairly short, and that's absolutely fine. That's what you're going for. So that is it. That is this week's weekly wrap up. Um, I hope that you are continuing to stay on track in the course and that you have taken my advice the last couple of weeks to be looking for sources and reading them. If you have not, if at this point you don't have a topic or at this point you have not located any sources, um, you are behind. And so please take this week to catch up. This should be a week that you really cram. If you're looking ahead, you're going to see that we are going to start drafting the research paper in pretty short order. We'll be working on that next week and the week after so that you have something approximating a complete rough draft early into spring break. And then we will be spending the last month or so of the class revising and expanding those drafts. So you should be moving steadily in that direction.